Hey guys, PB here from the Home Automation Project. Today I'm going to show you how to download, install and configure Frigate NVR. So Frigate NVR is an open source NVR software which is available for free. It is a pretty powerful piece of software. It has many advanced configurations such as AI based object detection, face detection, real-time object tracking, motion masking, zone setup, etc. to name a few. In this video I'm going to go through in detail the kinds of configuration that you can have for your camera setup, and also I'm going to show you an example of how you can use that setup for automating simple routines such as when a person is detected, an action is taken, such as switching on a light. So this is going to be a bit long video, do bear with me, but it is going to be packed with a lot of interesting stuff and learning. So I hope you like this video. So let's get started. Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how you can install and use Frigate NVR software with Home Assistant via integration. So one thing you need to know about Frigate, that it is quite an intensive application. So ideally I would not advise you to install it as an add-on in Home Assistant if you are using a Raspberry Pi. The add-ons, the way add-ons work is that they sit next to the Home Assistant server and run their own server, and through MQTT messages you can interact with the Frigate server. However, because it sits on the same box as Home Assistant, and because Raspberry Pi has quite a limited amount of resources, it generally struggles. So the ideal way to install Frigate will be on a standalone PC or different desktop or hardware, and then access or integrate with this Frigate software over the internal network or LAN with your Home Assistant. Nevertheless, in this video I'm going to demonstrate it by installing it on add-on and setting it up, but so that you can see all the steps that are required. However, when you do the actual installation, you might want to do the steps around the Frigate server on its own, and then the rest of the steps in Home Assistant on the Home Assistant instance itself. Okay, so to get started, as I mentioned, Frigate NVR talks with Home Assistant using MQTT messages. So you need a MQTT server set up and a broker configured so that Frigate can use that to talk to your Home Assistant. To do that, first you need to set up a user in your Home Assistant. A user is a special kind of person entity in Home Assistant, which can be used for accessing system resources. The way to configure users in Home Assistant is go to Settings, People, and on the top tab switch to Users, and then click on Add User. And you can use any name which is not a system defined name. There are few system defined names which the MQTT server doesn't like. But other than that you can use any name you fancy. I'm using the name, display name and username is the same, and I'll give it a password. Okay, and I like to switch on this option of can only log in from local network just to keep it a bit secure, but you might, depending on your setup, you might not want to do this. Then hit create. So as you can see, this user has been created. Next, go to Settings, Add-ons, and click on Add-on Store and search for Mosquito Broker. Click and install this broker. Give it a few minutes for the installation to complete. Okay, so now the installation has completed. Before starting the server, I like to switch these toggles on and hit start to start the server. As you can see, the server has started. So your MQTT server is now ready to receive requests, and the user that we created in the previous step can be used to access this MQTT server by the clients. So next step would be to install Frigate. As I mentioned earlier, you can do it as an add-on on the Home Assistant box, or you can have the instance set up and running in a separate Windows or another PC or desktop. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to install it as an add-on. So let's go to the next step. Next step is to install the Frigate add-on. For this, go back to the add-on page, click on add-on store, then click on these three dots and click on repositories, and then you need to paste the link to the Frigate add-on repository in GitHub. I will give the link in the description of this video for you to copy. Now click on add, and as you can see, it has found the add-on. Click on close. Now when you go back to your add-on page, add-on store page, ideally you should see the Frigate options loaded. If it doesn't load immediately, sometimes it might take a little bit of time. So for that, you go back to the home page, add-on store, and click on this refresh, and then come back. Okay, and as you can see, the Frigate add-ons have been loaded. There are a few options here, but the one that you need for Home Assistant is the one which says full access next to its name. So click on this and then click on install. Now wait for the installation to complete. Okay, so the Frigate add-on has now installed on my Raspberry Pi. Before I start this instance, what we need to do is we must create a frigate.yml file in the root of the Home Assistant, and we need to add some configuration in the file. The basic configuration that definitely needs to be added is the access to the MQTT user credentials, so that it can talk to Home Assistant MQTT broker, which we installed in the previous step. And also we need to add the configuration of the camera. One of the things that you will find when installing, that there is a Frigate NVR add-on, and that there is this full access. The full access gives you an option to switch off this protection mode. The only reason that you would need to do that is if you want to use hardware acceleration in case your camera supports it. If your camera does not support it, then don't need to bother about it. You can install a normal Frigate add-on. So to create that file, you would need to have some kind of file editor which allows you to access the root directory of your Home Assistant and create this YML file. To do that, again go back to your add-on store, search for file editor, click and install the file editor add-on. Okay, so this installation has completed. So let's start the file editor. Okay, so the file editor has started. Now go to this shortcut that you've added to the file editor on your left. It opens the UI, and here we need to go to the browse option. You can see it is in the root folder. We use this option to create a new file, and let's name this file as frigate.yml and click OK, and the file has been created. Let's open this file for editing. Okay, so now that we have created the file frigate.yml, the first lines that we need to add is the MQTT setting. For that, we need to put in the IP address of the host, which is the same as the IP address of this Home Assistant installation. And the user will be the MQTT user we created earlier, and the password will be the password that we added in the setting in the first step of this video. You need to set up some basic configuration for the Frigate server. I'll paste the code here, and I'll leave the code in the description as well, so that you can use the copy and paste and modify as you need. Okay, so now I have pasted some configuration here. Let me go through them at a high level. First thing you need to add is detectors. By default, if you are using a Google Codel USB stick, which is a recommended hardware for doing the AI processing using Frigate NVR, then you don't need to set this option up. However, if you don't have this, which is the case in my case, since mine is installed on a Raspberry Pi server, so I'm using the detectors, where here it means that the type will be CPU, and there will be 2 CPU threads that will be used. Next, we need to set up the cameras. So this will be the name that you want to assign to the camera. It can be any meaningful string. My camera is at FOC 200, so I put that as the name. Next option, RTMP false. RTMP should be disabled if your stream does not support H.264. I don't tend to use this option, and I always default this to false. I have not found any issues by doing that, so I will set that as leave that as is. Next, under the FFmpeg colon, one thing you can do is you can use this output args parameter. This ensures that you also record the audio as well as the video, and again, in my case, I don't want to record the audio, hence I have not set this value. Next, this HWACCL_args parameter. This one uses hardware acceleration. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to use this parameter, you will need to switch off the production mode. Again, for the purpose of this video, I won't be needing it, so hence I have commented it out. The next important bit is the inputs. The first thing you need to enter is a path. Now this path will be the fully qualified path to the IP address of the camera stream, including the username, colon, password, and then @ the full IP address, then colon 554/ the string that your camera software recommends to be used for. So if you have, for example, a different type of camera like a Reolink or any or a Dahua, then you can go to the website and find out the string for your accessing your camera streams and whether it has one or multiple streams. In my case, it has 2 streams. There's stream 1 and stream 2. Hence I've used the URL of stream 1, which is generally the primary, and the secondary would be of lower resolution, which would be stream 2. If you want to use both the streams, and it is recommended if you have multiple streams to use both the streams for continuous recording, the way you need to set it up is one stream will be for recording whenever you detect a specific event gets triggered which you want to record, but a usual 24x streaming will be on the lower resolution stream, which is stream 2. I will leave a more advanced configuration option in my description for you to check it out later, but for the purpose of this video I will keep this simple and I will just use one stream. Input args preset RTSP stream. This one actually won't need for setting up the simple configuration. However, this I will use it if I'm using more than one stream, so I will be using this parameter. Again, you will see I will leave a more detailed configuration to use multiple streams. Roles, in this case, there are a few values that it can take, but the most important ones are record and detect, which means the input coming from this path and this stream will be used to both record and detect. Now the next section is detection, which is like what is the, we need to set up the area and some parameters under detect. The first is width and height, which is generally matching the resolution of your camera. It could be 720 by 640 or 100p, but this is usually safe resolution. Most cameras support this, hence I put this to 640 360. FPS 5 frames per second for detection, used for detection. Enabled is true. And then station, this is an optional parameter. Again, if you don't need it for now, you can leave it out, and I'll come back to using this parameter in a later stage there. Next are the objects to track, which is in my case I have put person parameter, but again if you go to the Frigate documentation, you'll see it does track a lot of types of objects such as cats, dogs, car, vehicle, etc. I'm using person only for this demonstrating this setup. And then in filters, I find it useful to put a minimum score threshold and a minimum area. So minimum area is the bounding box for detecting the object, and the minimum score 50% and threshold is of variance, which is around 60%. I found from trial and error that this works well for me. You can, if you find that you are getting a lot of false positives, you can play around with these values, especially with the minimum score. You can probably increase it to 80%, in which case it will be 0.8. But again, as a basic criteria, this would suffice here. Next is optional section, which is record configuration. By default, there are some default values that gets used in Frigate. However, I like to set my record options to as a recording enabled true. This alone would work, but if you want to send some advanced parameters, I have given them, like retention will be 7 days and only active objects will be recorded, and then there will be a pre-capture of 10 seconds and a post-capture of 10 seconds. This means that when the recording actually happens, it doesn't just capture the detection within the frame, but also captures 10 seconds before the detection and 10 seconds after the detection. And then the object that we want to record is only when there is a person within the frame, and then the default retention for anything will be 14 days. And then again we can go down and put down specific object based retention periods, but that, yeah, I don't use that option too much. Then the last option is snapshot, strictly optional. Instead of, so this option will record the video, and this option will record some snapshots at regular intervals. And I have put the option timestamp true, which means that it will add a timestamp to the snapshot, and it won't crop, and it will use the bounding box to capture, and then it will retain for 7 days. So that's your simple configuration which you can use. And I'll go ahead and hit save so that this configuration is saved. Let's move on to the next step, where we will start the server which will use this frigate.yml configuration file to detect the camera stream, and then we can go from there. Okay, now that we have set up the frigate.yml file, we can start the server. I typically check start on boot because I don't want this, as I mentioned earlier, it's a pretty resource intensive server, so I only want to start it when I need it to be on. And auto update, I can switch on the auto update. I want to remove the boot option, and show inside bar is open and protection mode is on. So yeah, these are my default options, and we can hit start the server. Okay, so the Frigate server has now started, and as you can see, I have my camera coming up here. So note that if you want to edit any configuration on that frigate.yml file, you can use this config option. That should open up the editor, and if you edit anything here, you can then click save and restart, and that changes should be picked up. Next thing to note is the events. So if any event has been captured in the past duration, then that is saved here, and you can look at what the event was and the details, and also play the stored video. If we go back to cameras, and if you click on the camera to increase the size, then you will see two options here, live and debug. Now debug is a pretty useful option. So click on debug. Let's see how we can set up some of the useful things with the debug option. Go here and click on show options. First thing you can show is the bounding box. This would enable you to debug. If you have a missed event scenario where, for example, there is a person detected, should have been detected but doesn't, you can test it by using this bounding box, because if there is any object detected, it will show the confidence level and the detection tracking using the bounding box. And you can also use the motion boxes just in case you want to track whether actual motion is happening or not. One important thing to remember is this changing timestamp at the top is also detected as a motion, and if you want to not detect this as a motion, then you can use a mask, something called a motion mask. So you can use the mask and zone creator, and then click on add, and then you can select an area, a bounding box on the, like so, yeah, and then you can, so this gives you the mask coordinates, and what you can do is you can copy this from here, then go to config and come to the bottom of your config file and just paste it here. One thing you need to make sure is the indentation should be aligned to the items that are already there. So you should align this line with this line and click on save and restart so that the mask gets applied. And go back to cameras and wait for this to get restarted. Okay, you can see that the mask is applied. Another thing that you can do is you can create a zone. So by using a zone, you can, let's say you can demarcate a certain area, and you can say that only if there is motion in this zone, then it should detect as a motion event. This is pretty useful if you, for example, if you have a camera facing the driveway, and in that case there might be some car going on, the person or car going on the road, and you only want to detect within a zone which is your driveway zone, then you can use something like a zone. So again, for zone creator, what you need to do is you can come to the zone section and say add, and then you can draw a zone for this using these coordinates, let's say in this area, and you can then copy this option, and then you can go back to your config and you can go to the bottom and paste the zone here like so. Ensure that the indentation is maintained when doing that. Once you have put the zone, you can then say objects, person. So this would mean that you will only detect person objects, and the detection will only happen within this zone. Okay, so once you have listed the zone coordinate, you can also restrict the recording to be only a trigger within that zone. So you can say zone 0 as the required zone here. Similarly for snapshots also, you can say the same thing. Let me copy paste this as the required zones as zone 0. Let's save and restart the server. Okay, now I have restarted the Frigate add-on. So you can come here and click on zones. So it will show you the zone that we have defined. So any motion within the zone should be recorded, whereas the motion outside the zone should not be recorded ideally. So let's try and turn the camera towards me. Let's see when the detection starts and at what point the event gets captured. Okay, so it has detected me as a person here. As you can see, it hasn't with the confidence level of above 50%, in fact above 60%, but it is not recorded my motion because I'm not in the zone at the moment. Let me turn it a little bit further. Okay, and you can see there's motion in the zone. It has detected the motion, so hopefully, yep, as you can see, it has captured my image. There are a few more configurations that you can add depending on your needs. One of the configuration is if you want a stationary object to be detected. By default, Frigate detects only moving objects within its frame, and if you wanted to detect a stationary object, you can add these lines here. It means that at intervals of 20 frames, it will look for an object which is not moving for 50 frames and consider that as a stationary. If your camera supports hardware acceleration, then you can add the options or parameters for that, and this should help you with a smoother streaming experience. For more detailed documentation around Frigate, you can go to the official documentation of Frigate, for which I'll leave a link in the description box. So that will be all for today's video. Hope you liked it. I've decided to divide this video into two parts since this was getting really long. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to show you how to install the hex component of Frigate and use the person detection that we saw in the video as an input for an automation in Home Assistant and trigger an action off the back of it. So it is also going to be a really interesting video. If you have any comments or queries in the meantime, do not forget to leave them in the comment box below. So see you in the next video. Till then, stay safe and stay connected.